Welcome to the Rees Centre's monthly lunchtime seminar series. I think this is the third seminar that we've had. So most of you know me, I'm Georgia Hyde-Dryden, researcher at the Rees Centre, and I'm just going to be chairing today's session in Vanya's absence. Just for housekeeping, if you can just keep your microphones on mute whilst we're doing the presentation, then afterwards there'll be some time for questions and discussion. And as you can see, we're recording the discussion as well, the presentation. So kind of if you're eating your lunch, maybe turn your camera off if you don't want to be filmed. Well, I'm very pleased to welcome Marta Garcia Malsosa to present to us today. So we got there in the end with the technical stuff. So I know you've spent a lot of years working in a residential centre as a social educator, and you're now a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Girona in Spain. And you're involved in research in the field of education of children in care, but more broadly around inequalities and inclusion. And your specialism is participatory research methods with young people and also quantitative data analysis. So today's presentation, I'm very pleased to say, is titled "We Are Here, Strengths and Weaknesses of Working with Advisory Groups of Children in Research." So it focuses on a project that you've done recently, creating an early detection model of gender violence applicable in schools, but your presentation is going to focus more on the methodological issues around participatory work with children. So as I mentioned, if you've got any questions and you want to put them in the chat as we go along, and then we can pick those up at the end if you don't want to forget them. But otherwise, I'll hand over to you, Marta, to start the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hello, it is nice to meet you. Thank you very much for inviting me today in this lunchtime seminar session. I am glad to have the opportunity to share with you the research we are carrying out. Also, I would like to thank you for welcoming me the next January. I am looking forward to staying here, carrying out a 3-month research stay in which I will be happy to share and learn from your expertise. And well, regarding today's session, I will present a research project focusing on the detection of gender-based violence from children's perspective that lasted 2 years. We thought the work we have done with advisory groups of children would be especially interesting for you. So this presentation will focus on this participatory research strategy, although I would also explain the overall research context and its main results. So let's get started. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, we have entitled the presentation Strengths and Weaknesses of Working with Advisory Groups of Children in Research. These groups that we also called expert groups were created within the framework of a research project named WeAreHere. It was carried out from 2021 to 2022 in Catalonia, Spain. The project was led by Dr. Carmen Montserrat and involved a total of 6 researchers. We received funding from a bank foundation, and we also had the support of the Department of Education and the Secretary of Childhood, Adolescence and Youth from the Catalan regional government. The objective of the project was to create a model for early detection of gender-based violence occurring at home that could be applied in schools. We named the project We Are Here, as we wanted to stress the importance of listening to children's voices and giving them an active role in research on the issue. As we all know, well, the topic of the research was, as I said, the gender-based violence occurring at home. As we all know, gender-based violence is a major social problem. Despite legislative efforts, awareness-raising campaigns, and the programs and resources that have been developed, official statistics continue to reflect an increase in victims. Concretely in Spain, here you have some numbers. Sorry. Only during this 2024 35 women have been killed, 24 children have been orphaned, and 10 have been killed. The Spanish legislation, as well as many others in Europe and far beyond, recognizes gender-based violence also as a form of violence against children. As a matter of fact, they suffer its consequences directly, but also indirectly, and over a time span of many, many years. Detecting and responding to violence in its early stages can help both the children and their mothers and spare the suffering, chronicity, and lifelong consequences for the child. However, early detection is still a challenge, and studies focusing on children experiencing such violence show that disclosure is one of the greatest challenges to early detection. Children do not know who to tell or who to turn to for help when they are experiencing such situations. So this was the research problem we wanted to address with WeAreHere. To address this problem, we assumed two main statements. On the one hand, the participation and implication of children is crucial. In situations of gender violence, as with other problems that affect their lives, we should see children not only as victims, but also as holders of rights. This is their voices must be listened to, and we should give them an active role in explaining family problems and seeking support for themselves and their families. And also we need to take into account their perspective if we want to develop effective tools for detection. These are tools that really enable them to overcome the obstacles they find when talking about situation of gender-based violence at home. So taking all that into account, our first main research question was what would make early detection of gender violence at home easier from the point of view of children. And this was the first assumption. The second one is that the schools must be involved in early detection for two main reasons. They are the only institution that has regular contact with the entire child and youth population. And on the other hand, they provide predictable routines and positive relationships with safe adults. Nevertheless, according to previous evidence, there are some difficulties in doing so, in detecting such violence. Among others, students don't always identify teachers and staff as people who can be helpful in these situations. And also, teaching staff don't always think that helping children is part of their duties, or they just don't feel prepared, as we also found, as you will see later. On this basis, we formulated our second main research question. What would need to be improved for schools to become capable of helping boys and girls who are victims of gender-based violence? And linked to this main question, others that we ask in this research were what should be the role and what are the obstacles to detect it in its early stages. Okay, as you see in the figure, the stakeholders involved were not only children, but teaching staff and policymakers as well. They all contributed to build the detection model, which was the main output of the research. Concretely, children's participation followed a dual path. Some participated as co-researchers organized in the so-called advisory groups. These groups developed the research together with the research team through the entire process, as we will see later. And some other children participated as informants. Concretely, a representative sample of school children was asked to answer a questionnaire on this topic. Regarding teaching staff, their participation consisted in answering a questionnaire about the role of teachers and schools in detecting gender-based violence and the obstacles they perceived. And policymakers involved were, as we said, the Department of Education and the Secretary of Childhood, Adolescence and Youth, who approved the procedure and checked the instruments and the final model as well. As it's shown, as it is shown by the arrows in the figure. Deepening in the role of the advisory groups of children, as you can see in the table, they were involved from the preparation of the research instruments to the dissemination of the results, except for the stages related to the research design and the sampling and collecting data, which involved technical complex procedures and a wide territory, which make difficult to involve children. 4 meetings were scheduled for each group, 1 hour to 1 hour and a half each session. These meetings were led by members of the research team, 1 moderator and 1 support person, which were always the same, so the children could be confident on them. We also had the support of a youth worker or teacher, a trusted person for the group prior to the research. Each meeting was organized around the discussion of a work axis, always with the support of a visual presentation, a PowerPoint, that we shared with children. In the first meeting, we review together the questionnaires brochure previously drafted by the research team. In this meeting, we discuss with children not only on the content, but also on the wording of the questionnaire. In the second meeting, children approved the final version of this questionnaire based on their contributions. In the third meeting, we discussed the results, the questionnaires answers. So we presented them the descriptive analysis of data. And in the last meeting, we discussed the detection model. We collect their contributions and suggestions, and also we collect children's reflections on participation through a video that we will see later also. Finally, the groups participated in the final conference together with researchers, politicians, and technicians involved in gender-based violence detection. In the final conference, children could explain their experience and points of view about the research process and its results. But who were the members of these groups? Well, we created concretely 6 advisory groups, especially for this research. They were created on the basis of the children's councils. Children from these groups were asked to participate on a voluntary basis. The groups were from, as you see in the map, 6 different locations in the 4 Catalan provinces. These locations were selected according to the diversity in terms of rural or urban municipalities, and also according to the existence of the children's councils. Participants were aged between 10 and 16, and they were mainly girls. Around 70% were girls. A total of 45 children participated in the advisory groups, which were made up of a maximum of 12 members. In fact, the average was between 7 and 8 children per group. Okay, on the other hand, 3,664 school children answered the questionnaire from 8 to 18 years old. 50% girls, 50% boys. It was balanced. And these children were from 106 different schools. Also balanced. 53 were primary schools and 54 were secondary schools. It is worth saying that around 12% of the children in our sample stated that they had witnessed a situation of gender violence at home. Regarding the teaching staff involved, of the 106 schools that participated in the first stage of the research, we received responses from the teaching staff of 86 schools. This made up of a total of 322 teaching staff members. Mainly they were teachers, but also 20% were teachers belonging to the management team, and less than 1% had other professional profiles. Participants were aged from 24 to 66 years old, and the majority, again, were women. Okay, now I will only give a glance to the main results. If you are interested in more information, you can freely access to the whole results at the website of the research team, and also following the link in this and the next slide. Well, the key points we wanted to highlight from children's questionnaire results are the following. First, 93% of children have heard of gender-based violence, mainly at the school, or through the media, and on the internet as well. In the figure 1, you can see that most of the children show willingness to get actively involved in stopping the violence by defending their mother and asking for help. As you see, emotional blunting strategies are less common and appear more frequently among those who have experienced such violence at home. In fact, when doing multivariate analysis, an interesting finding was to see that older children and those who had experienced gender-based violence at home were less likely to ask for help and were also less trusting of adults. In line with other research, many children participating in our study, around 60% of them, stated that they do not know where to go in the event of gender-based violence at home. The majority, as seen in figure 2, would report a situation of violence to the police, members of their family, or an emergency telephone service, rather than to their teachers. Regarding teachers' questionnaire, the main results were that first, in general, and in contrast with other research, teaching staff in our sample believe that they should get involved in the problem and that it is important to refer cases detected by schools. Also, according to the results, the treatment of gender violence by schools is poorly systematized. Only 22% of teaching staff affirm that the subject is integrated into the school's education project. And when they do approach the subject, they usually talk about physical violence, sexual violence and psychological violence and other types of violence were less common. Schools do this mainly by using graphic information, posters, leaflets, etc., on an occasional basis and on special days, like the International Women's Day, for example. And depending above all on the awareness of the teaching staff. In figure 3, you can see that according to teaching staff, students do not generally report these types of situations to them. Usually they say nothing, and the school only finds out when there are evident signs making it manifest or through other professionals, a finding that fully coincides with children's answers, as we have seen. Sorry. In figure 4, the main obstacles perceived by teachers, as you can see, were related to training, school organizational questions, such as time, coordination with other services, space, mistaken beliefs among teachers, such as children must not search the solution, maybe they are not telling the truth, or if they say something about the situation at home, it could be negative consequences for the child, and so on. Also, obstacles concerning teacher and student relationship, especially in secondary education, where teachers don't have the same closeness with the students than in primary schools. Well, in fact, it has to be said that, as you see in the figure, moderate to big differences between primary and secondary schools have been found for all the items here. Okay, and finally, I would like to underline some children's quotes taken from the comments in the questionnaire. From them, it is clear that, in general, children's understanding of gender-based violence is fairly comprehensive and wide-ranging. They argued against violence and in favor of treating each other with respect. They wish solutions and claim that macho behavior should be criminalized. Moreover, the term was somewhat associated to the patriarchal system. They recognized that gender-based violence is a part of their daily lives and that feminism is a question of justice. And finally, they claim for schools to be more active, to play a more active role in prevention, as stated in the quote on the bottom left of the slide from a boy. I think this issue should be discussed at a school from an early age to prevent these terrible accidents from happening, he said. Well, although children mainly wrote positive comments, 40% out of the 658 comments we analyzed from the questionnaire were quotations on denial of gender-based violence, including openly positioning themselves against feminism, claiming that feminism is a radical option and that feminists exaggerate, or showing concerns about the negative image of men when talking about male violence. You have two examples of it in the slide. There is no such thing as gender-based violence. Violence is violence, regardless of gender, age, nationality, or skin color. Or this one. I think that in recent years, the image of men has deteriorated and that not all men are like that. According to the multivariate analysis we carried out, the denial of gender-based violence comments were strongly associated with boys and with secondary school children. We could put forward some hypotheses to explain this phenomenon, and we can talk about it later if you wish so, as this one, presented by a girl. What happens in my school is that, unfortunately, boys don't want to accept that certain things are male violence because they do some of these things. This was a girl, age 16 years old. Okay. Back to the issue of participatory research, we finished the project with a very good impression of the children's participation. They feel happy and fulfilled with experience, as you can read in this quote in the slide. Concretely, on regard of the advisory groups, it was the first time we implemented such a strategy. And our aim is to further develop its implementation in the future. So we wanted to deepen its analysis. And in doing so, we had two objectives. The first one was related to the identification of strengths and weaknesses of participatory strategies used in research with children. To this end, a review of the research process was carried out by the research team. This review was based on the 14 ethical and methodological elements identified by Monruil and others, which we found a really useful tool. And the second objective was to gather the benefits perceived by children and adolescents participating in the project. To this end, a theoretical thematic analysis was conducted to encode and categorize the data. Here, there is a list of the main strengths we found related to the advisory group's strategy. Based on this analysis, we also could find some possible improvements that we would like to share with you. Presenting the questionnaire, we think that it would be important for further research. Presenting the questionnaire through a video recorded by the group of expert children participating in the research to make the instrument more friendly and motivating. Providing an infographic in accessible format with a summary of the main results obtained so that it can be hung in a visible place in each school, or also it could be useful for sharing the work done with the Children's Council. And finally, regarding completion of the research, the idea would be to hold a closing act beyond the final conference, involving all the children participating in the research, a festive event, and an act of recognition of their contribution, a public recognition of their contribution. Related to the weaknesses detected, we also have advanced some measures that could be carried out in future further research, proposing a more in-depth involvement of children, especially in the first stages of the research, which could include deciding on the research questions, objectives, design of not only the instruments, but other aspects of the research as well. Second, attributing rotating roles to the children participating in the research through the sessions with the idea of favoring a horizontal functioning of the group. And three, introducing alternative forms of expression and creation beyond written or oral work in the sessions with the groups of children. Finally, these are some benefits perceived by the children participating in the advisory groups. In order of more to less frequency, they stated that they feel useful and able to help fix the problem, and also capable of exerting political influence. This, from our point of view, these results show that if applied well and under the right conditions, participatory research gives rise to processes of empowerment and political influence for children. Also, children perceived as a benefit having the opportunity to talk about the issue of violence. In this sense, it is interesting to know that many children claim the role of knowledge as a tool for the prevention and approach an issue that sometimes is very much marked by political ideology and self-interested disinformation. In the third place, achieving some personal learning through research was also perceived as a benefit, as this boy explains. I think this research project has been very interesting, and I've been able to learn quite a few things that I didn't know about gender violence. I think it has helped me understand more what it's about and see different opinions and different ways of trying to resolve it or work on it. It's helped me quite a bit. And finally, children really appreciated to be listened to on an issue in which, from their point of view and accordingly to research, children rarely have a voice. Now, if you and the technology allow me, we will watch a short video recorded with the collaboration of the children from the advisory groups, which shows some of their perceptions. So let's listen to them. We will share it later. Okay, and the conclusions. To conclude, in the first place, there is a certain debate about what is and what is not feminist and gender-based violence, mainly among adolescents. Some boys feel uncomfortable talking about these topics. Secondly, children want to form part of the solution to the problem by taking action and seeking help, but many state that they would not know where to go in the event of experiencing gender-based violence at home. Schools can offer children and adolescents safe places they can trust, but it seems that they are not currently seen as such by children. In fact, as we said, teaching staff in our study are sensitive to situations of gender violence that students may or do suffer at home. They have no doubt that they should play a role. However, for children, the school setting is seen as the preferred information source, but in the event of a situation of gender-based violence, they have doubts about whether it would be the right place to find help. In the fourth place, both children and teaching staff need time and a concrete space to talk about it at the school. And according to them, more information and training is needed. Indeed, teaching staff consider that they do not always have enough training and knowledge to deal with gender violence in the best possible way. better coordination seems necessary as well. And there is room for improvement in the organization of schools to make the prevention more effective. In other words, we think that a more rigorous systematization should exist when it comes to addressing this issue at the schools. In the fifth place, research design based on recognizing children as right holders generates different and valuable learning opportunities from our experience. On the one hand, the active participation of children helps the research team understand certain aspects of language and interpretation, sometimes beyond the reach of the adult universe, since they are approached from a genuine child's perspective. And at the same time, from the perspective of children, their participation helps them to get to know themselves better and learn more about the issue of gender-based violence. Based on these conclusions, we built the detection model, conceived as a guide for schools to prevent gender-based violence, as well as other situations of violence. It is structured in these 3 blocks: awareness, help, and coordination. The first one, awareness, is related to raising awareness of gender-based violence in all its forms in a cross-cutting manner and integrated into the school's educational project. Help is related to preparing the schools to listen to students who experience gender-based violence at home to boost children's disclosure. And finally, coordination is related to establishing flexible ways of coordination and connection with the services network. So, well, now we have reached the end of this presentation. The model, as well as the results I have presented here, are available freely at the website of the project, as I said. And if you want to learn more about this project, you can also consult the publications referenced in this slide. Well, I really appreciate your kind attention, your patience with technology issues. Thank you very much. And if you have any comments, suggestions, questions, I will try to answer them.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Marta. That was really, really interesting. I've got a few questions myself, but if other people want to put their hand up, or I can't see in the room very clearly, so someone might just have to shout up if they've got questions as well. Sorry?
Never mind. I have a question. Sorry.
I expected Ellen would have lots and lots of questions on this particular subject.
Than everyone else can share. But I was curious to the extent that there were issues with consent for parents giving their consent to the children to do the questionnaire, considering that also their children responded to a high degree that they had experience with gender-based violence, and how difficult that was. Was that facilitated through the schools, that they received their permission forms and their information about the project?
Okay, we have the questionnaire was administered at the schools, but it was voluntary the participation from the children, so they need to fill an informed consent. Information consent. The name, I don't, sorry. Yes, they need to fill an authorization from themselves, and for children who were under 14 years old, also from their parents. And yes, we had parents that didn't wanted the children to participate in the study. So in this case, children did not participate. This was for us an ethical issue, because children sometimes wanted to participate, but parents didn't want to. And and to address, well, to trying to prevent these kind of situations, we give to schools our contact, email contact, and also WhatsApp contact. Because if some parents wanted to first contact the research team, we were able to share with them the questionnaire that their children were going to later complete. And this happened in three occasions. three families contact us before giving their consent to participate in the research. I have answered the question.
Yes, that's fine. Yes.
I had a question. I was just wondering, because you'd got children 10 to 16 years old, wasn't it? I was wondering if there are any issues about sort of working with those children in different ways or different levels of understanding. Just there being a big difference between a 10-year-old and a 16-year-old, especially around this particular subject area as well. I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit about that and if there are any issues or concerns.
Yes, the advisory groups were more homogeneous. Three of them were from children were made up of children of primary schools, and the other three groups were carried out with children from secondary schools. So yes, primary schools, this means that children had 10 to 12 years old, and the others 13 to 16.
So was there a difference in how you were able to engage them in kind of the researcher role, depending on whether they were primary or secondary? Did they essentially, I suppose, have a similar role, or was the role of the older children much more involved, perhaps?
No, the script and the procedure of the meetings were the same. Yeah.
Great. Does anyone else have? I can't see if there are any hands up in the room. It looks like someone's waving at me. I can't tell who it is, but
I've got a question, please. Thank you. You very helpfully itemised strengths and weaknesses of the kind of engagement model, research design, and the quality of participation. How much of those did you identify before you undertook the research, because they were necessary constraints of the study, and how much of that was reflection afterwards and learning for you in the project?
Sorry, I can't understand the question.
Did you identify the strengths and weaknesses of the research before you went into the field, or after? Were they reflection experience, or were they necessary constraints of the study design?
Yeah, no, you mean the weaknesses and strengths I have shown in the presentation. It was the result of an analysis after the ending of the project. After the ending of the project, we analyzed the transcriptions of the advisory groups, the comments of the questionnaires, our observations when collecting data and when doing the advisory groups, and we analyzed the experience, but after the project was finished. This was
and did you do that in relation to a theoretical model of what good would be? I'm just wondering how what's your learning really in terms of some of the things, some of the weaknesses, were those just because they were limitations of the the circumstances, of the context, of the funding, and so on, and or were they more about difficulties in achieving those objectives? Why were the weaknesses there? What could you have done differently?
Well, you mean in the participation of children? Yeah. The weaknesses, the main weaknesses were the children were not autonomous in this research. So they always work with us, with the research team, and was the research team who decide on the research process. So we take on account their perceptions. We also made changes in the instrument and in the final model according to their suggestions, but they didn't decide for themselves what would be interesting to ask, what would be interesting to investigate around this issue. So I think there's a need for a more long project with children. More time is needed to mature their participation, to involve them in more aspects of the research.
So the low level of autonomy, was that a necessary constraint of this stage of the study, or could you have done that differently? I think you're saying you would need more time and it would be built on what was done already. You could add more autonomy. You could ask the children to be more involved in the specification of the research, but that would necessarily be in a follow-up study. You couldn't have done that in this study. Is that right?
Yes, I think if we want to do so in the future, we need to develop tools for training children as researchers, or and we didn't do so in WeAreHere. We talked about the topic, but we don't prepare children or train children to be researchers.
Yeah, thank you.
And just one last question: what was your greatest challenge working with the children in the group setting?
Yeah.
What was your greatest challenge working with them?
Well, children were very open to talk, and they really, I think, they were free to speak about this topic, and they were they're willing to speak about it. They wanted to speak about it and to talk about it because it's a very political issue and it is on the society debate, and they want to form part of this debate, But challenge was that it's a very practical issue, but we don't had the continuous participation of the children. I don't know how to explain. Many children left the research project in the house. I don't know. They don't continue participating all the meetings because we had a problem that the research was carried out at the final of a term and the beginning of a new term, and some children changed school. Some children were lost in this process. So we left children. We left children in the road. I don't know how to say it.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
you. I don't know if anyone's got any last questions. I'm just conscious of time and people might have other meetings to go on to. So unless I can't see anyone waving at me from the meeting room, I think we'll leave it there then, if that's okay. So I just want to say a big thank you, Marta, for the presentation and the questions. It's given us a lot to think about, and really interesting project as well. So thank you very much for that. And we'll share the project information and the links and things as well, so people can access that and access the video too.
Can I just say, sorry, because I think Marta, you're going to come and join us in January as a visitor.
Yes.
But we look forward to meeting you in person, and thanks very much for your presentation.
Me too. Thank you very much.
We'll see you all in January then. That's not too long now, of course. So that's brilliant. So thank you very much, everybody. I'll let you get on with your day. Thank you. And bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.